Somewhere in the last few seconds, npm install react ran about 270 times. That is not a guess. The number comes from the npm registry's public API this week. 162 million downloads of React in 7 days. The second place framework, Vue, got 14 million. Those numbers quietly end the longest running argument in software, the front-end framework war, and the ending was never announced. So where exactly does React stand today? Whichever serious survey you open, they all point to the same place. One comparison sums it up. In Stack Overflow's 2025 survey, across roughly 49,000 developers, more people use React than use Angular, Vue, and Svelte combined. Line all three rivals up together and React is still ahead. And it is not a lead that is sitting still. In last year's survey, React was in the 39s. This year, it is pushing 45, 5 points in a single year. You expect a 13-year-old technology to slide as it ages. This one is climbing. One more figure worth leaving here. jQuery, the library this entire war was fought to replace, still pulls almost 18 million downloads a week. The loser of the last war still out-downloads the runner-up of this one. So where did it come from? React was born in 2013, and at first nobody took it seriously. When Facebook open-sourced it at a conference, the reception was close to mockery. The reason was JSX. React wanted you to write your markup directly inside JavaScript, stepping straight on the rule the industry had spent a decade teaching, never mix those two. But there was a real problem behind it. The web of that era ran on jQuery. You updated the page by hand, piece by piece. Fine on a small site. But on a constantly changing interface the size of Facebook's feed, the code turned to spaghetti and nobody could track what was breaking what. React's answer was simple and heretical. Split the interface into small reusable pieces. Let data flow one way only, and let React, not you, decide when the screen refreshes. Facebook built it precisely to keep its own enormous interface standing, and it worked. Within a few years, the mockery turned into admiration. One-way flow made bugs visible, components made code reusable, and React Native let you write for phones with the same knowledge. Then a quiet flywheel started turning. Companies hired for React because everyone knew it, and everyone learned React because companies were hiring for it. Now the downloads, year by year, straight from the registry. In 2015, 4.5 million downloads for the whole year. In 2025, over 2 billion, roughly 450 times bigger in a decade. But the size is not the point, where the curve bends is, and it bends in 3 places. The first bend is 2016 into 2017. Downloads nearly tripled in a single year. Hold on to that one, we come back to it in a minute. The second is February 6, 2019, hooks. The release notes for version 16.8 were literally titled, "The one with hooks." Every component written since looks the way that release decided it would. Remember that sentence, it becomes load-bearing in the AI section. The third bend is this year, and it is the reason this video exists. Here's how to picture it. In the first 7 months of 2026 alone, React was downloaded more than in all of 2025. Nothing like that has happened before in 13 years of this curve. Behind that first bend is a single day, September 14th, 2016. That is the day Google shipped Angular 2. But it was not an update, it was a completely different framework, rewritten from scratch in a new language. Same name, incompatible code, your existing AngularJS project simply did not run on the new version. And AngularJS, at that moment, was the most deployed framework in the world. Put yourself in the teams who came to work that morning. The application you had spent years on is suddenly end of life. If you want to stay with Google, there is exactly one option: rewrite everything. Months of work that ships not a single new feature. And if you were rewriting anyway, why stay on Angular at all? The one thing that had kept teams on Angular for years was the cost of leaving. Google zeroed out that cost itself. The numbers show it exactly. React was downloaded 22 million times in 2016, 59 million in 2017, nearly triple in the single year after the rewrite. React never had to beat Angular. Angular opened the door for its own users, and React was already standing on the other side of it. The thing that came closest to killing React was not a rival, it was its owner. In 2007, the industry noticed a small clause in the license. React was free, with one condition: the day you sued Facebook over patents, your right to use React went away too. Overnight, this stopped being a technical question. For any company built on React, it was a risk that landed on the legal team's desk. WordPress broke first. WordPress, which runs a large share of the web, announced it was pulling React out of its new editor over exactly that clause. Facebook lasted 8 days. On September 22, 2017, it backed down and moved React to the MIT license, with no conditions attached. Here's what that actually means. The corporate backing everyone credits for React's win nearly sank it, and by 2017, the community had grown big enough to make one of the largest companies on earth reverse itself in a week. What carried React was never Facebook. It was the people and the code that no longer needed Facebook's permission. React is a 13-year-old technology, and its growth had long since settled. From 2023 to 2024, it grew 20%. Mature, boring, fine. Then 2025 came and growth jumped to 70%. This year, I compared January through July against the same window last year, more than 3 times. In year 13, I ran the identical query on the others, because on its own, that might mean nothing. Everything grew. Registries always grow. But while Vue, Angular, and Svelte stayed in a normal range, React alone shot up. In exactly the year AI coding tools went mainstream. On its own, that is a correlation. But the mechanism is is spelled out on Microsoft's own developer blog in a post whose title says it plainly. Models don't have preferences, they have context. Ask a model in an empty chat which framework to use and you will most likely get React, because most of the code it learned from is React. Someone tested it too. A developer gave the same app prompt to 6 different models. 6 models from 6 different companies converged on one React stack, and academia has measured it. A paper titled "The Matthew Effect of AI Programming Assistance" describes the loop. The more popular a framework is, the better models write it, the better they write it, the more code ships in it, and that code becomes the next model's training data. I have to be honest here, NPM downloads are not a count of humans. A large share is CI servers, mirrors, and increasingly the coding agents themselves. How much of that 3 times figure is genuinely human, we do not know. But that admission does not weaken the argument, it strengthens it, because the loop does not care whether a human ran the install. Hooks in 2019 set what React code looks like. GitHub filled up with that code over the next decade. The models learned from it, and now they write it themselves and ship it, and it becomes the next model's textbook. So React's competitor is no longer another framework. It is the data the models are trained on, and that data is React. Everything so far has been in React's favor, but there are things that cut the other way. The most visible one, React's share is growing while its likability drops. In State of JS's 2024 survey, 82% of respondents use React, but only 75% say they would use it again. On the same questions, Felt scores 88 and Solid 90. Its rivals are better liked by everyone who touches them, at a 10th and a 30th of React's usage. The people holding the ecosystem up say it too. Mark Erickson, the Redux maintainer, and about as far inside the React world as you can get, wrote in 2025 that the community is fractured. The React team is pushing server components, while by the download numbers, most developers are still writing plain single-page apps, and the defections started at the top. The team who wrote React Router, the people who put the most work into React, announced Remix version 3 with this line: "No critical dependencies, not even React." The team that knows React best became the team that walked away from it. There is also something almost nobody noticed. React no longer lives in Facebook's repository. Open Facebook/React on GitHub and it redirects you elsewhere. The project has moved under an independent foundation. Meta let go of the most valuable asset in front end, and the download curve did not so much as flinch, which tells you who was carrying it all along. Let's put it together. The framework war ended on September 14, 2016, and the one who ended it was not React, it was Angular. Google told its entire user base to rewrite everything, and a team forced to rewrite is a team that is no longer tied to anyone. React's real strategy only becomes visible looking back. It never did that, not once. Hooks changed everything and broke nothing. Components written in 2015 still run today. Its rival made its users rewrite once. React has not done it in a decade. That is the whole war. But what keeps React on top today is no longer 2016. It is AI, because the models writing code learned React. Anyone who asks for something, even someone who does not know what to ask for, gets React back. That code ships, it lands on GitHub, and it becomes the next model's textbook. Every turn of the loop makes React a little more the default. That is why 7 months of 2026 outweigh all of 2025. So React is no longer winning against other frameworks. It is winning against the possibility of something replacing it. For a rival to overtake React, it first has to overtake the code the models learned from, and all of that code is already React. So what would change my mind? This: 2 consecutive quarters in the public registry where Vue's or Svelte's download growth beats React's. I am leaving the queries in the description. Anyone can run them monthly. At a checkable prediction, in the next State of JS survey, React's would use again figure falls below 75%, while its usage does not fall at all. More used, less loved, and no way out. That is exactly what a locked-in standard looks like from the inside. Next time somebody tells you a framework is dying or winning, ask them for one thing: the API call. The registry is public, the query is one line, and it does not care what anyone announced. See you around.